Hello and welcome back there. So now we're on to the surfacing and the rendering stage. First we're going to work on some basic lighting. We're over in the render tab now instead of the modeling tab. You'll see I've also put on a light switch and some other little bits. There's like a dimmer switch for the lights and a flusher for the toilet. Nothing too drastic. So that's our scene basically as it stands at the moment, and with the candles around. We're going to do 3 different shots. We're going to do a day shot with no ceiling lights turned on, and then we're going to do a sort of night shot with the ceiling downlighters turned on, and then we're going to do a night shot with lit just with the candles. So we've got 3 stages to do. So this first one we'll work on the basic lighting for the day shot. And we'll do all the surfacing based on this lighting model, and then when we come to the other 2 night versions, it's just a case of changing the lighting as opposed to all the surfacing. We've got our scene camera here. I've just renamed this scene camera. I think it might have just been called camera by default, and that's because we probably will be adding an extra camera in called like an item camera, just so when we start tweaking some of the surfaces, we can do a close-up render of some areas without actually changing the orientation of the scene camera. Okay, we've got the same same views here as before. This is like a normal perspective. All the views can be switched between perspective, left, top, right, bottom, the same as we always did over in the model tab. We'll leave this bottom as a perspective view. This top right one here we're going to set as the scene camera, and this is the actual final render of the scene camera. I'm going to come up to options. I'm just going to make sure the quality is on draft quality for now. That'll just speed up the iteration process. We start changing and tweaking things. So I'm going to moving the camera in. Even though you can't see it, that's because there's no light within the scene. That's why I've got this version here. We're going to go over to the properties of the camera, the scene camera. We're going to come down to focal length, and you imagine this is just like your camera lens on your old SLR camera. I want to put a wide angle lens on this, so I'm going to bring this down to about 24 millimeters. Now I want this shot to be quite almost claustrophobic looking, so I'm going to pull this down. I'm also going to go over to the shader tab. I'll explain more about how the shader sort of tree works when we come to do the first set of surfacing. But we're going to go over to the render node at the top there, and within the frame tab here. Now this is the actual sort of size of the actual final rendered output. So we want this I want this almost square. So I'm going to bring this down to 650 pixels and see if we're going to cut off no data, which we're not. So I'm going to come down again, 600. We might even go down to 550. Okay, so now the frame is almost square. There's not a lot in it now. And that sort of composition is looking pretty good to me. I'm going to come back to the camera, scene camera there. We'll have a look here. Now at the moment you'll see the rotation isn't quite minus 180, so I'm just going to hard code that in just so I know I'm looking directly down the scene. And same with the X position, I'm just going to zero that out just so I know I'm looking smack down the middle of the room there. The height's about 1.5 meters, which is about head height, and I'm 2 meters back from the central position, which is actually just bringing everything in quite nice. One of the other issues you've got here, you'll see the X rotation. There is a slight angle. I'm looking down, basically from my head, I'm looking down at these taps here. And while it's not that noticeable in this scene, because we're quite close in, there is a slight bit of perspective distortion. Now if my head was quite high, and I was looking down, or if I was a sort of a human size figure, looking up, say, from, at a building from the outside, say looking up at a skyscraper, you know, you get the effect where it sort of goes towards a point at the top. Now that's correct. That's to do with the perspective. So we don't want that in architectural visualizations. We want everything, all the verticals to be vertical. So what we're going to do, we're going to just zero that out. So I'm looking dead straight now, but that's now affected, so I can't see the bottom of the toilet and things. So I'm going to come down here to the film offset Y, and I'm going to use that just to just to pull it down. I'm just going to save the scene there. Let's just see what else we need to tweak here. There's a directional light already in the scene which we're not going to use, so I'm just going to delete that. Even though there are some gaps up here for sort of environmental light, indirect light to come into, we're going to be lighting it with some area light, so we haven't got to worry too much about that. Okay. We'll open the environment tab. There's a 4-color gradient there at the moment. I'm going to turn off visible to refraction and reflection rays. We don't have any calculations of the outside, but there's no windows to be taken into account really here, so we don't put any excess strain on the renderer. Settings here. Now these do anti-alias, and we're gonna come down from Gaussian we're gonna go up to box, which is the sort of tidiest one. Samples on 8. I'm just gonna bring them down to say 32. But on the final renders, I'll probably go right up to 256 or higher. That's not going to add much time to the actual rendering, so I'm just going to bump that. I'm going to leave everything else as standard for now. Okay, so we're going to add the first area light. So I'm going to come up to items, and I'm going to create light, and I'm going to create area light. Now I'm going to do all the tweaking within this viewport down the bottom here. Okay, so I'm going to hit W key, and I'm going to move it. Let's go over to a top view. I'm going to move it into this doorway here. Just going to spin it around 180 degrees. Spacebar drop tool. Now you'll see straight away there's light coming into the scene here. I'm over in the shader tab. If you come down here to area light and you go to radiance, this is the actual how bright the light is, so to speak. So I'm going to bring that down to 1. So it's just adding a little bit, maybe 1.5. I can leave simple shading on for this, because it's just like a basic backfill light. We don't add up any samples or cause anything else. I'm going to come over to light material. Now the colour is on 1, white, like 1 in the red, 1 in the green, 1 in the blue. Nothing in the real world is ever 1, 1, 1. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull it slightly towards a blue. Just very slightly. Just a cool blue. Okay, we're going to come up to items. I'm going to add another area light. Hit W key. Let's move this one into position. Basically, I just want it on the opening, about the width of the opening. Now if you look at the actual light model in the render view over there, you'll see that even though it's an area light, there's a definite sort of bright spot in the centre there where the light's emanating from. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn off simple shading, and that'll make the light emanate more from the entire rectangular face. Now I'm going to come over to, I'm going to leave it at 3 for now, even though it will have to go up. I'm going to come over to the light material, and I'm just going to change the colour. I'm going to warm this one up, so I'm going to put it towards, this is a day shot, so I'm going to go more to a sort of an orangey, a nice warm yellow. And I'm going to put the the radiance up to say 6. Now straight away on here you can see there is some grain, and that's noise produced by the area lights. Area lights are notorious for being noisy. I'm going to right click on it, and in this case I'm going to send instance. That way, this will be for this one on the top here. Now I've done it as an instance rather than a new light or a duplicate, just so I can change the value once in the first light, and the italicized version there, which simplifies the instance version, will automatically be updated accordingly. Okay, so there's my just do a quick roundup. You can see it is quite noisy. Okay, we're going to set the sample to about 200. We may have to go up to 300, but we'll see when we start doing a render test. So you can see the lighting's getting it's getting better. We're going to come back over to the render, and we're going to come down to global illumination. I'm going to bring the ambient intensity down to 0.4 for now. I'm going to turn on indirect illumination, and I'm going to turn on irradiance caching. The indirect range is how far the light bounces around the scene. Now I know the scene's about 9 meters long. Let's just take it on a final quality one, and I'm going to add one indirect bounce, and straight away now you'll see that the light basically building up within the scene and getting far more realistic looking. I'm going to add an extra bounce, so I've got 2 bounces. I'm going to leave all the other settings as standard for now. If you start rendering out and you get a lot of noise issues, and you get like blotching, then you can uprate some of the rays, etc. But increasing the light from 200 to 300 would probably fix it. Now's a good time to do a quick render. This won't take only a few seconds. There's no materials as such and reflections at the moment to slow it down. And now what I'm looking at in this part is I'm just trying to get the scene, get the back wall square sort of central maybe, and just make sure I've got a good overall lighting. If you've got any areas which are blown out, now's the time to sort of cut the lighting down a bit. But don't forget, all the walls and all the materials at the moment are a sort of a default 80% sort of grey, almost a sort of white colour. So as you start adding materials, the light is only going to get less, so you don't want to bring the light down too much now, because you'll only end up having to push it up at a later date. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. There's a little bit of patching up there, but most of that's such a small artifact. Most of these sort of things will be resolved as the surfaces get put on. And if they are still there at the end, and we have got some noise, we can always bump up some of the light samples a bit. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that's come out. So that's the end of our basic lighting. When we come back in the next part, we'll start working on the actual main wall shell, because that's the biggest set of materials to put on, and we'll take it from there. So I'll see you back for that part. Bye for now.